If the learnings were there in terms of disruptions, when you're pioneering something, it's a sort of very fine line between being before your time and being a pioneer. And two things. Firstly, that in itself is a learning because you can mistime it in that thought process. The second one is when you're faced with that, do you want to stay the course even though you might be a little bit early for your time, or is it too expensive to stay and then you call it a day and move on? So it's a very hard call to call it a day and move on and say, no, this was before its time. And most people don't do that. So that itself is a huge learning. And the other part is that if you don't wish to and you feel now I'm in it and I'll pace it out for 3 years, my learning has been to have a survival plan sometimes, because you go in with a plan, which normally is a success plan because nobody makes a non-success plan. And what happens is that if the revenue doesn't flow in, the cost remains the same. But if you can at that stage evaluate this, you're convinced about it. So when we started cable TV long ago, for the first year we didn't get a single person to connect. Now today it would be elementary that if I was selling a service that somebody had a multiple choice, you would do that. But it was a conviction that we wanted to stay with that. But when we started home shopping, for example, long time back in 1995, and now there are 2 or 3 successful channels here, at that stage, we were clearly before our time. Now the question was either in 1990, because the people wanted to touch and feel products, the delivery system was abysmal, cash on delivery was a pain in the butt, credit card penetration was even worse than what it is today. And therefore that was very clearly a before its time. So how do you take a hard call on that? So I think those were some of the sort of early lessons in the whole disruption space. And I think in India, everyone, for some reason, is very fearful of failure. And I think that's a huge problem. I think failures are setbacks at the end of the day. They're made permanent if you consider it a failure. And it's temporary if you consider that to be a setback. And I think in one of the chapters in my book that I've written, I've said that failure is a comma, not a full stop. For exactly that reason, I wasn't trying to be smart about it. And I think it's also a combination of being slightly unemotional about a business that you're in. You can be extremely passionate. To differentiate between being extremely passionate about your business but not being extremely emotional about your business. And it's a fine line again, as fine a line as pioneering versus before your time. So I think technology in cinema is great because firstly, it's an overall experience, and it's taking the experience to the next level. It's taking the experience towards more being real, to it being multi-dimensional. But at the heart of it is storytelling. And technology is not going to be able to replace storytelling. So I think if you keep your storytelling as a very big coefficient of what you want to do, and then you add the technology, you can take it to an incredible experience. But if you do technology for the sake of it and take out storytelling equation, which can easily happen, but otherwise I think from a India cinema perspective, I think we're some time away because technology has to be matched with infrastructure. You can't just do it without that. So I think we're about 5 to 10 years away from that. There'll be early adopters, but not at scale. Digital platforms that are coming in, it will be still for the absolute top of the pyramid context, primarily because of the content offering. And I don't think today they can, just penetrating US content into India has not worked for 100 years. It's not going to suddenly work over time. But that top of the pyramid will work. That top of the pyramid will pay a subscription. So the good part is that it'll push a subscription habit and a model in media which has not been there, but it'll still be very niche. When they take the big plunge to create original content here, I think that's when the next thing will move. But it's a little tricky. Why would a country that's working in 164 countries, in the 165th country only create content for that country? Is a question mark. The investment community spoiled it. So the same people who paid unrealistic valuations for companies in the I don't know what they were thinking, have now decided to not. So that's just a small circle of people that have corrected that. Yes, the perception then changes because don't forget, media played it up so much, so now media has to drag it down. So you've got a media effect and you've got a small inner circle of 10 investors who created this hype and are now moving out of that. But if you take those two froth out of it and you go to the fundamentals, I think that at the bottom of the pyramid, the angel ecosystem is growing. And as long as that's growing in 2016, I think it's fantastic because that's where you're seeding people. And then they'll have their challenges in 2016 and 17 and 18, by which time I think better sense will have prevailed.